Climate change campaigners are out in the capital again. Not Extinction Rebellion this time, but Greenpeace. They've blocked BP's head office in St James's Square with protesters inside large containers at the front entrance. Our political correspondent Simon Harris is there for us tonight. How long do they say that they are hoping to stay there, Simon?
Nina, the protesters said they had enough food and drink to stay here for a week. To begin with, the police made no attempt to move them. Greenpeace is calling on BP to give up its lucrative oil and gas business. The company says it respected the right to protest peacefully, but this was dangerous. The assault on BP's London HQ began in the early hours. By mid-morning, abseiling activists were hanging off the front of the building, attaching letters to windows, spelling out the word emergency. The protesters also used 5 homemade metal containers to block the doors. They didn't just sit on top, but inside too.
We've been in the box for how many hours now?
6 hours.
6 hours.
7 hours.
7 hours. This is hour 7 in the box.
The police shut off half of St James's Square, bringing roads in this part of the West End to a standstill. Drivers caught up in the congestion were less than impressed.
I reckon they're stopping me from working, is what they're doing.
It's a really bad timing of this protest because we're just trying to do our deliveries and then it's really not happening because of this protest thing.
Oh, well, it doesn't seem to be doing the environment much good, does it? Because we're all sitting here in a traffic jam and everyone's got their engines running.
Today's protest was timed to coincide with BP's annual general meeting.
We can't let companies like BP continue down the path that they're on now, because that's just not compatible with any form of future that we'd like to see.
Do you care about the pollution from traffic caught up in this protest?
Of course we care about pollution from traffic, from any form of things, but we have
causing traffic jams.
We need to look at the big picture here.
The gridlock was nowhere near as disruptive as last month's chaos during 11 days of action by the group calling itself Extinction Rebellion.
Simon, in the last hour, some arrests. What more can you tell us?
Yes, you'll remember during those last protests last month there was some criticism of the police for not acting more swiftly to end the disruption. Well, in the last hour, officers armed with angle grinders and hammers have started to break open those 5 metal containers outside the doors. Each container contained 2 Greenpeace activists. So far, 6 have been arrested on suspicion of aggravated trespass. And at the moment, the police are working on the 2 containers left at the front doors here in St James's Square. As for the abseiling activists who we saw earlier dressed in red on the roof, well, they have now all come down voluntarily. The police were not planning to remove them forcibly. There are various health and safety risks involved in that, as you can imagine. The police say they also have a duty of care to the protesters. But within the last few minutes, we've seen all of the red-suited abseilers on the ground. It would appear that there are just 4 protesters left inside those 2 boxes, and the police are working and hammering away at the moment to try to get them out.
All right, Simon Harris, thank you.
Good evening. It was a near impossible task that the fire crews faced as they tried to contain a fire that started in a warehouse in Tottenham overnight. A combination of the wind and a lack of water pressure meant that they couldn't stop it spreading through an industrial estate, sending smoke billowing across North London and destroying several businesses. Those who saw their buildings go up in smoke could only watch on in frustration. Tonight the fire is out, but the full extent of the damage has yet to be revealed. From Tottenham, our correspondent Simon Harris reports.
There was a note of distress in the dawn chorus. The birds were agitated, with good reason. The warehouse fire sent thick smoke belching into the sky above North London. 100 firefighters converged on Northumberland Park. And to begin with, no one knew what the smoke contained, just how toxic it might be.
We've been giving out advice since early this morning for residents who can see smoke in their vicinity to keep their windows and doors closed.
The alarm was raised shortly after midnight. Fire was spreading rapidly through a building on an industrial estate in Tottenham. The fire crews were confronted with 2 immediate problems. The wind was changing and the water pressure from the mains wasn't up to the task. The answer lay not far away. Water from the Lee Navigation Canal was pumped at the rate of 8,000 litres a minute along hundreds of metres of hose pipe. But by now, the fire had jumped to neighbouring buildings. Aziz Ukka's plastic recycling business was destroyed. He was frustrated by the fire brigade's response.
If the fire brigade would have acted so quick, okay, it would have only just like a one building loss or second building, but it wouldn't be whole block when we came here. And it was small fire. I mean, it was getting bigger, but it was very easy to be controllable.
Obviously the wind direction and the contents of the properties may affect the speed that a fire grows. Obviously I can assure you that the crews worked as hard as they possibly could to extinguish the fire as quickly as possible.
How much of a problem was the lack of high pressure water?
We use a lot more water than actually the mains can give us, so we have to secure an additional supply.
As the flames spread to Malcolm Gilbert's motorbike workshop, he was unable to save his two parrots, Leo and Squawk.
Yeah, the parrots are dead.
Oh, didn't know.
No, that's okay. There's a pair of parrots. So, yeah.
The fire is thought to have started in or close to this furniture and electrical appliances firm. 12 hours after the first firefighters arrived, the worst of the inferno has now been extinguished. But the buildings are still smoking, and the fire crews are likely to be here well into the night. The worst affected buildings face demolition. Several family-owned firms have been left devastated, and one couple who lived in their workshop are homeless tonight. Simon Harris, ITV News, Tottenham.
Good evening. We knew it was coming, but we just didn't quite know when. But at 10 o'clock this morning, Theresa May finally confirmed that she'll be handing back the keys to number 10 in 2 weeks' time. It was an emotional end. She fought back tears as she gave a short speech outside the famous Black Door. Even though she hasn't yet packed up and returned to her MP life in Maidenhead, the race is very much on in terms of who will succeed her. But at least she can take comfort that there was some sympathy for her in her constituency. Our political correspondent Simon Harris has the story of May's departure.
Theresa May almost held it together, but at the very end of her resignation speech, her composure cracked.
I do so with no ill will, but with enormous and enduring gratitude to have had the opportunity to serve the country I love.
With that, the Prime Minister headed for the exit door. Less than 30 miles from Downing Street in Maidenhead, her constituents weren't surprised at the news.
She had to go, admittedly, but I do feel sorry for her.
She wasn't going to stay much longer, was she?
She should have gone a long time ago.
As a member of Parliament from Maidenhead, she wasn't bad.
Theresa May's career began in the council chamber at Merton in southwest London. Many a politician has cut their teeth in a London borough. The next stop on her journey to number 10 was Maidenhead, where she set out to win over voters.
You're voting Conservative in the election?
No.
Despite that encounter, she became the town's MP in 1997.
Theresa Mary May has been duly elected to serve as a member for the said constituency.
3 years ago, Mrs May threw her hat in the ring to be Tory leader, seeing off her main rival, one Boris Johnson, with this withering put-down.
I know other people have also negotiated in Europe. I mean, I think Boris negotiated in Europe. I seem to remember last time he did a deal with the Germans, he came back with 3 nearly new water cannon.
But away from her script, Mrs May seemed to lack the sure-footedness of a successful political leader. She was booed after leaving Grenfell Tower without meeting survivors or relatives. In the end, she lost the support and confidence of her parliamentary colleagues, although most today wanted to sing her praises.
Today is a day for all of us to reflect on the Prime Minister's achievements, to thank her for everything that she's done for this country, and to show her the respect and gratitude that she deserves for having always put this country first.
She is a devoted public servant. She has a huge sense of duty, and actually she can stand tall.
It's never easy to resign if you're the Prime Minister, but I'm afraid I think this decision had become inevitable.
Theresa May has learnt it can be a lonely place at the top. As a former Prime Minister, there will be reminders of how it used to be, not least the police bodyguards who will always be close by.
Oh, Simon is still with us, as you can see. He's over at Downing Street tonight. Simon, plenty of local MPs are potentially in the running to be the next Prime Minister, aren't there?
Yes, there are, Charlene, and uncharacteristically for some of them, they seem to have taken a collective vow of silence today, perhaps to avoid adding insult to injury to Mrs May. The frontrunner, of course, is Boris Johnson. The former London mayor and MP for Uxbridge and South Ruislip was at a conference in Switzerland today where he was giving away very little. Jeremy Hunt, the Foreign Secretary and MP for South West Surrey, told his local paper he would announce his candidacy at the appropriate time. Michael Gove, the Surrey Heath MP and Environment Secretary, declined to answer any questions about his leadership ambitions. And there was no word either from DOMINIC, RAAB, the Esher and Walton MP, who resigned as one of Mrs May's Brexit secretaries. Rest assured, they won't stay quiet for very long. The leadership contest doesn't officially kick off for another 2 weeks, but we can expect to hear an awful lot from all of them very soon.
I'm sure we can. Simon, thanks very much.